Welcome back to the channel. The focus of my videos to date have really been mostly on technique, more specifically the technique that I like to use. But there's a lot more than just technique that goes into a good dragon boat team or a team that's going fast on the water. Technique is just one factor really in a whole range of things that come into play to make a good dragon boat team. So I thought I'd give the technique stuff a rest today and just talk about some of these other things. The first one I'm thinking about is power. Sheer grunt, just raw muscle in the boat. So without a doubt, if you are lucky enough to have that in your boat and they're able to apply it through good technique into the water, then chances are you're going to be moving along pretty quickly, and you're more likely also to have very strong starting sequence, because of course you need that initial shunt at the beginning of a race to get the boat up and moving, and that is where your power, the raw power, comes into play. Last year when I was in Thailand, I was fortunate enough to be able to train with some of the Thailand national squad of all different divisions. And I was talking to a Facebook friend of mine who was paddling in the Australian team, and I happened to mention to him that I was getting some time with the Thai national paddlers. And he said to me, "Is there much power in the boat?" And it wasn't till later, after I'd kind of reflected on that I can probably say, in terms of absolute raw power and grunt, the answer was probably yes and no. They obviously go very quick, the Thais, but they bring a whole lot of other stuff together very well to make their teams go really fast. The kind of power that they would put down, I'm not sure it's comparable to, say, what the Canadian team might put down, or the Australians or the Americans. But their power to weight ratio is absolutely through the roof. In the Western world, of course, there's a real focus on power and conditioning and resistance training, weightlifting, body weight exercises, right? So power is definitely a factor in making a dragon boat go fast, but once again, it's not the only thing that is in the mix of making that boat go fast, but it is definitely in there. I know that when I am in the gym or doing resistance training, weight training, that I can feel it in my paddling, and it helps out with my strength through the water on my stroke and also my recovery. So power through conditioning is definitely a very important factor alongside technique training. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about is timing and rhythm across the boat. So one of the first things we're taught when we start dragon boating is to try and paddle together, right? There's more speed, there's more sense of being, together as a team paddling. If you can get the timing right and also the rhythm right. So timing is very important. I have seen some posts and some, I guess, couch analysis that perfect timing, absolute precision, Swiss watch type timing is not actually necessary, and nor do the top teams at the very highest levels ever achieve that kind of timing. Of course, it's all happening at blinding speed when you're watching it unfold in real time, that you wouldn't think that there are variations in timing in between the paddles hitting the water. But if you were ever to slow down the action through a video, you will find that there are micro differences in timing. Now, does that mean you don't have to have perfect timing to be able to go fast? Well, it helps, right? I would say that it helps. So timing and rhythm across the boat. On the rhythm side, what I'm talking about there is the way our bodies are moving in the boat, and if they're moving together or in the same way or in the same fashion. So the rhythm and the timing of the boat makes a difference. So you've got to get that right. You've got to have that mix right as well. The other thing that can make a difference is mental game. Dragon boating is obviously a very physical sport, but there is actually a mental side to it as well. And if you haven't got that mental game together, that mental discipline together, it can affect your paddling. And I mean, if you're paddling in what I would say a novice or intermediate or even social grades, you may not be so concerned with this mental side of the game, because you might just be there to have a bit of fun, get out, have a bit of semi-competitive, racing. And so you may not be pushing your mental discipline in that direction, like say an international paddler or a paddler it's part of a national team might be doing. But the mental side of the thing is definitely a factor. We all have stuff going on in our lives outside of dragon boating that can sometimes affect our headspace and what's going on in the boat. And so sometimes you have to be able to cope with that stuff, shut it out, focus on what's in front of you and get the job done. So that's when your mental discipline will come into play. Another example of when mental discipline comes into play, of course, is during your training sessions, some of which can be long, hard runs. And you will reach a point in some of these drills where your body is simply screaming at you to stop paddling because it's hurting so much and your lungs are bursting, you're gasping for oxygen. So there's a certain amount of mental discipline that comes into play there to get you through the wall and out the other side so that you can continue with your job. You've also got your training and conditioning program, closely related to the power thing I just talked about before, but your overall training and conditioning, how you go about doing that training and conditioning so that you as a paddler and as a team, so that you're fit for purpose, right? So there is a certain way that you can train in the gym to assist with the kinds of physical and mental demands that you're going to face in the boat, right? I won't dive into that right now, but your training program and your conditioning program is very important, especially if you're looking to reach the highest levels of the dragon boat sport. The other thing that goes alongside that is your nutrition and hydration. So what you're putting into your body and staying hydrated is very important, especially if you're going away to regattas that are going to be in the heat, right? Stifling heat. We all know how sapping the heat can be across a full day of racing. It can really drain you. So you really got to be sun smart. You got to stay hydrated, and of course your nutrition across that day, and even your nutrition on days you're not training comes into play. You want to make sure you're fully loaded on race days, of course, and that you've eaten well before. So look, I'm going to stop there. There are a few things that I just wanted to bring into the mix that are also very important for dragon boating, other than your technique. although there is a lot of focus on technique trainings, and it does seem to take priority when you start getting into dragon boating. It's one of the first things you will be taught. So I might come back to a couple of the things that I've spoken about previously and do a deep dive on them and unpack them and really get underneath the hood of them so we can have a closer look. But until then,